Obviously, we want to talk about two things, and they all got merged together today. Donald Trump made a kind of hit and run at the NATO summit. He was there for, I don't know, 24 hours or something. Got to spend the night at the palace of the royal family of the Netherlands. Apparently slept well. Apparently there's a nice bed there. He thought the king and the queen were very good looking. He said right out of central casting. I was really glad to get that report from our president. And then, he talked a little bit about NATO and a lot about how the United States had obliterated, and you may not use any other term or you are offending the entire US military, obliterated Iran's nuclear capability. And let's talk about both. Doug, since you got these many titles, one of them by being the U.S. ambassador to NATO, let me start with you and one specific question, which is going to maybe seem a little, surprising around here, but in the last term of the Trump administration, one of his concrete achievements was getting the Europeans to contribute a little more to their national defense. And he deserves some credit for that. He was pushing on it. This time around, there seems to be a large group, but two exceptions maybe, of NATO countries that are saying they're going to go further and they're going to up it to 5%, or one says 3.5%, but it's all a lot more. And I just want to give you the chance here, Doug, to give credit to Donald Trump.
Well, I wish I could. I don't really wish I could, but I don't think that's where the data falls. I mean, first of all, the pattern of heads of state and government meeting at NATO summits and committing to increased defense spending starts back in 2014. The previous invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the seizing of Crimea and the destabilizing the Donbass and all that, when under Obama in 2014, they agreed to take a decade to reach the point where national defense spending is 2% of GDP. So that's the famous now 2% pledge. Today, they upped the 2% to a target of 5%. We can unpack the 5%, but let's just keep it there for simple podcast math. And I think that it's clear that while this started under Obama and in the first Trump administration and now in the first 6 months of his second, there has been a Trump effect to put highlight and to put emphasis on defense spending. But frankly, whether it's Obama or Biden or Trump, we got the wrong president. The president most responsible for the move in defense spending across NATO is Putin. So if anybody should be applauded, or if this thing should be subtitled someone's pledge, it should be the Putin pledge. Because no matter what American presidents say, they wouldn't be able to convince their NATO allies to make this kind of defense spending increase without an external threat. And that threat is clearly now from Putin. And the much abbreviated NATO statement, it was 5 paragraphs. I think the last one was 85, right? So a much abbreviated statement referred to Russia as the most severe security threat. And so Trump signed up for that language. But look, the reality here is in my view, it's the security situation that accounts for the increased defense spending, not any sort of persuasive talents of an American president.
I enjoyed watching Kori's face throughout that as he went through each of the steps, and she would nod and then she would shake and so forth. And so I need to go to Kori to unpack your facial expression.
Yes, so my vehement disagreement with Doug is that the pressure on increased European spending doesn't start in 2014. It starts in 1952, right? When the NATO allies have built an integrated military command and actually have to start providing the forces for it. And we've been arguing about European defense spending ever since. I very much agree with Doug that the security situation is driving it. I made a face because I really think you do not have to hand it to Putin on any count. Like, yes, his dangerous behavior precipitated the increase in spending, but let's not title it the Putin. You don't have to give him any credit anywhere across the board. Um, where I um, where I disagree with Doug is that I do think Trump has a very important role to play in the increase of spending. And I don't mean that as a compliment. I don't think, I think what NATO allies are doing is what NATO does brilliantly, which is buy time and paper over deep seated allied disagreements. What the NATO summit was attempting to achieve was preventing the President of the United States from repudiating the Article 5 Mutual Defense Pledge, which Trump has teased several times, including on the plane going over to the NATO summit, that he didn't actually sign up for. There are lots of different interpretations of that. And so what allies were really worried about, the security threat they were trying to forestall, was American abandonment. And the allies did what they're really good at, which is, what is going to get us through this moment? That's the story of the Harmel Report in 1967. That's the story of the dual track decision in, what was it, Doug, 1982, 1984?
Yeah.
Something like that.
The Euro missile.
What is
the Euro missile crisis.
What is unique to this moment, though, is that I agree with Doug that this is ultimately not going to be significant, because what Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, and the allies succeeded in doing is understanding that what they needed was a big, gilded, glitzy target for Trump to be able to claim credit for. 3.5% on hard defense, another 1.5% on bridges, repaving the Autobahn, things Europeans are going to do anyway. And they are banking on the fact that they just have to get through the Trump presidency. And they're buying time by making a pledge far into the future that they are banking on Trump, the Trump administration, having no ability to follow through and track what's happening. And so I think the president got played in the finest NATO tradition, and I'm glad America's allies are smart enough to deal with us that way.
I mean, the shorthand, David, is that NATO faced a two-front war, right? Russia to the east and Trump to the west. And over the last 24 hours, they effectively countered the Trump threat to the west.
Yeah, and they did so in a way that, by the way, shows the world, yet again, how you deal with Trump. Make a promise into the impossible future that he can take credit for, and he'll do that. And then he'll go away and he'll move on to some other thing.